Mini episode 1200 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1200. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here for this auspicious occasion. I have two of the original FDH Lounge dignitaries with me and two who share additional titles as well. I'm, of course, an original dignitary. I, Rick Morris, also the managing partner. We have Nate Noy, original FDH Lounge dignitary, and a couple of years back was christened the Director of Research for the Lounge. And that is very relevant as we get into our third edition of the FDH Lounge February 29th Time Capsule. So, Nate, welcome back for another installment of this as our Director of Research.
I can't believe we're doing this for the third time, Rick. It feels like a couple weeks ago we did this. That was 8 years ago. Crazy.
It's remarkable. It really, really is. And a newly minted position here in the lounge. Of course, an FDH Lounge original dignitary, but Chris Galloway, during our celebration for the program's 13th anniversary, as we were going through looking back at the 2010s and ahead at the 2020s, Chris Galloway, our newly minted chief futurist here in the FDH Lounge. Well deserved, my man. That's all I can say.
Well, and I'm so good that 8 years ago, I believe I predicted I would be chief futurist.
Yeah. So that was not one of Donald Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns. You were able to call that one. But as far as it goes, though, I will say before we get started here for the point total of last time, because not all of these predictions that we do and our fellow members of the FDH Academy of Arts and Sciences, any of our other voters, some of these are just value judgment votes. There's no right or wrong answer. Some of these are predictions, and there is a right or a wrong answer. Steve Servillo ended up getting the most points correct last time. He got 5 points in 2016 for the predictions for what would happen between February 29th, 2016 and February 29th, 2020. From there, Nate, you were in second place with 2.5 points, and myself and Tom Dank tying in third with 2 points. So this is tough. I mean, there's
Hillary got
you. Yeah.
Hillary got you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of potential points at stake here. There's a lot of points, so that shows you we didn't get a whole lot of them right. I will say, Chris, I told you this before, there's no way I wasn't going to bust your balls about this. Who will be president on February 29th, 2020? As we were going through here, you were looking at it, and I understand that you were thinking that it would be somebody that would be from the... actually, no, this was from the previous time around. Last time you picked Mitt Romney because you thought it would be by the House, no electoral college win. It was the previous time. Bob McDonnell, governor of Virginia at the time. It was one of those things where it looked like a safe pick, Chris. He looked like a consensus kind of a guy till the stuff came out later on and he went to jail. So some of these picks are more entertaining than others.
Jail. Actually, his thing was overturned. He never actually went to jail.
Oh, he never did. Okay.
Yeah, no, Bob McDonnell's whole conviction was actually overturned.
Okay.
The entire thing. So they were eventually, he missed 0 time, and their entire conviction was tossed out.
Interesting. Not guilty. Y'all got to feel me. Okay, so he didn't end up doing any time, but by the same token, in 2012, you really helped put this event on the map here, because I remember Nate and I just being slack-jawed when you predicted the advance of 3D printing. Literally the first time he'd ever heard of it, I'd ever heard of it, probably a lot of people had ever heard of it. You called it back then in 2012 as an invention that would happen that would be a notable technological advancement in the next 4 years. So that's the kind of thing that we're out to do here, is to highlight those type of things. And like I said, that was one of the great moments in the history of the show, hearing and Nate and I try to make sense of this in real time, what the hell 3D printing is.
And Now it's a real thing. Shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
So points to Chris for that. Before we get started on any of the predictions, the obvious elephant in the room is this one as the third edition of the February 29th time capsule. This is out of necessity the all things being equal February 29th time capsule. That being, as we are still in relatively early days of the coronavirus pandemic, if you want to call it that, and I think it's not too soon to say that. Again, who knows how it's going to affect the trajectory of any of the picks that we make here. And again, we may end up looking dumb on some of these ones here just because that may change the course of human events in ways that we can't yet imagine. So this is a thing where, Chris, when I sent out the survey a couple weeks ago, I mean, I didn't even think to include this on here. This just shows you how quickly this has mushroomed. And again, we're making the picks we're making, I think, without taking that into effect, but it may influence a lot of this stuff, Chris.
I think it most certainly will, but it's also why this exercise is so unique and why it's challenging. Because whether it's a pandemic or some other out-of-left-field black swan event, that's what makes predictions so challenging. Because we can all look back in 5 years, 10 years, and say, boy, who would have ever seen that coming, right? There's probably a dozen things we can talk about that could fit that description. So, that's the thing, fun of the game. That's certainly where it'll happen.
That's right. And that's the challenge for you as our chief futurist as well as for the rest of us here. But getting into this, again, this exemplifies the FDH Lounge as far as being all over the place. Some of these are sports, some of these are non-sports, some of these are hard and fast predictions for which we can assign points on who was accurate. Some of it is just hazarding guesses for which there is no right or wrong answer necessarily. We start with pro and college teams to win more than one title between this February 29th and the one in 2024. And these are all, of course, members of the FDH Academy of Arts and Sciences. Tim Trammell votes for Ohio State. I assume he means football. I'll just put him down for football. He didn't vote for anybody else. Dave Adams says the 49ers, the Dodgers, and the Lakers. So he sees a lot of parades coming in the City of Angels, at least 4 of them in the next 4 years. Ron Glasnap agrees with him and says Lakers. Steve Servillo also says Lakers, but he also says Yankees and Chiefs, which that would be some heavy lifting for the Chiefs. That would mean that they'd have to win 3 and 5 years to do that, because of course the one that they just won would not count for this exercise. John Adams joins the party and says Lakers. Boy, everybody is really sure that LeBron is going to hold up and stay in L.A. and everything. Everybody's really believing that that's going to happen, apparently. For me, Rick Morris, I'm saying Dodgers, not Lakers. They're the team in L.A. that I think will do it. I will say the Milwaukee Bucks, because they're my pick at this point to win this year, obviously, the way that they're going. And I will say Clemson football. I think there will be somebody in the NCAA. And I think, to me, Clemson has kind of taken the mantle that Alabama was at as that presumptive team. So, turn to you, Chris. Do you have anybody that you think is going to win more than one title in the next 4 years?
I only have one team that I think is going to. I don't think there'll be anybody that will win more than one in that 4-year stretch between the NFL, MLB, NHL, or NCAA. But I am going to go and hang my hat on the Boston Celtics to win 2 titles.
Wow. Okay. Think it's going to come up big for your boys. Okay. So that...
Well, and that's not just being homerism. I like where that team is going. I like the way they sit in terms of and getting to the finals. And especially if Giannis bounces next year out of Milwaukee. And I also think that LeBron is reaching an age where, even though he is superhuman, you can see a scenario where, he finally blows out a knee or something, and the Lakers, go back to winning, 2 out of 10 games. So, I just, in terms of being able to win, again, I can see the Lakers potentially winning 1 this year. I can see the Clippers winning 1, but it's so hard. And if I was going to pick anybody, I'm going to, go a little bit of a wild card there and take the Celtics.
Big ups to you.
I like their young core, and I love their coach.
Well, you got to respect whenever anybody goes against the chalk, and I think my picks were fairly chalky, and they are in a lot of different areas. So props to you for thinking outside the box. Nate, you'd indicated to me off air you were probably looking chalk in a number of different areas, so I'm curious what that means in terms of these sports picks.
Yeah, Rick, man, the thing is, you look at pro sports right now, and I see a dynamic emerging after the last few years with the power teams, the big cities. This is like the rest of this country, right? 97% of our country lives in 3% of the area.
Mm-hmm.
19, that's how it works. The big cities, more people, the more money, the more highlight, the more everything. The Dodgers just loaded up. They're going to win multiple championships in the next couple of years. Look at what they just added to their team. I mean, the Astros now are in utter disarray with what happened with the cheating scandal. Maybe the Yankees are going to be there with them for a while with what they've got as a core. But you got to like the Dodgers. Just on paper, they look too good. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football right now, and that's why I like the Chiefs to win more than one. I know winning 3 out of 5 is a lot, but this kid does things I've never seen. I've been watching football like you have, Rick, for well over 30 years, and Patrick Mahomes does things on a football field that Montana didn't do, that Brady couldn't do. This guy does things on another level that I've never seen. I think he can get multiple championships. I question it in my mind why he couldn't. There's nobody on his level right now in the NFL, and I'm not sure there will be. Lakers, yeah, they've got Anthony Davis, they've got LeBron right now. It's going to be a heck of a battle. I think them and the Greek Freak are on a clipping course right now. It just looks like the NBA. There's a definite drop between those two teams and the rest of the league. They're going to collide. Let's see what happens. But even if LeBron has, say, a downturn in the next few years, AD's locked into L.A. Again, it's about glamour. It's about money. He's staying in L.A. You and I talked about him 7 years ago when he was still in high school in Chicago. I told you then he looked like a king. Then he went out and he won himself a national title in college. He's still the best player in basketball besides maybe the Greek Freak. I got to put my money on the Lakers. And then when you come to the college sports, Clemson and the ACC, it's like they get an automatic Final Four every year, right? Who do they have to play? They get all these layups. Maybe Notre Dame will go in there this year and give them a game. I think that game might be in Notre Dame. But you got to like Clemson because they're always in the Final Four. And I pick Duke as well because, again, it seems like they're always there. They're in the mix. Probably won't be any NCAA basketball team that get multiples the next 4 years. But Duke's just one that, they're so consistent. They're going to be in the tournament. I guarantee you that. And if you're going to pick one, you might as well pick Duke. That's where I'm at.
Very interesting. I will say this. On baseball, I almost picked Yankees and Dodgers because I really think right now there is a big cutoff between them and everybody else. What made me flinch on picking the Yankees is the one non-power team in baseball, by which I mean, super team as defined by the media, basically. And they're the two-time defending NL East champions, and nobody considers them a super team, and rightfully so. But the Atlanta Braves, if Liberty Media ever starts spending to augment that young core, they should win a World Series in the next 4 years. Will they do that? Will they take advantage of the moment? I don't know, but that's what kept me from picking the Yankees alongside the Dodgers in that one there. Most titles in individual sports, what this one comes down to is who's going to win the most majors in the PGA, and who is going to win the most majors in men's and women's tennis. Also, will anyone in NASCAR win more than one title in the next 4 years? Season title, that is, obviously. So Tim Trammell selects Brooks Koepka for the PGA. Nobody asked, but he said Nelly Korda for the LPGA. That wasn't one of the ones we were asking, but he loves women's golf, so we'll take his vote. He's saying Djokovic in men's tennis, Pliskova in women's tennis, and Hamlin in NASCAR. Little recency bias as he filled this out right after Daytona, and he says Hamlin, but okay. Dave Adams says McIlroy will win the most in the PGA. Federer in men's tennis. That's a real clip and save at his age if he can pull that off. And then, again, he also has, I believe, Koepka tying with McIlroy as well in that. Ron Glasnap just picking NASCAR. He says Joey Logano. Steve Cervillo says Dustin Johnson in golf. It will be Nadal and Golf in tennis. So he sees golf taking a big step up the next couple of years. And why not? Because the last time out, there was a big tie for a bunch of them that won 2 titles in women's tennis in the last 4 years, 2 majors. And so, if that remains the standard, if it remains a splinter, she could certainly win 2 or potentially 3. And Kyle Busch is his NASCAR pick. For Johnny Adams, Justin Thomas for golf, Jokovic and Kennan in tennis, and Austin Dillon in NASCAR. My picks, I said McIlroy in golf, Jokovic and Osaka in tennis, and Kyle Busch in NASCAR. So we'll swing it around to you, Chris. How do you see this shaping up in the individual sports the next 4 years?
Well, starting off with NASCAR, I went Denny Hamlin.
Okay.
In men's tennis, I went Medvedev.
Okay.
Halep in women's tennis, and Koepka in PGA.
Okay.
Picks to win. If anyone is going to win 2 or more, those were my shots.
Koepka was going to be my pick until the thing came out about the back issues, and given that I took him number 1 overall in the FDH Fantasy Golf League this year, I wish I had known about the back issues before the draft, but, that's the way that things go sometimes. How do you see it shaking out in the individual sports, Nate?
Well, Rick, I went with the chalk at the golf and the tennis with McIlroy and Djokovic. I think they're, clear at the top of their game. We're that one at least going to win one more championship between them and maybe a couple. NASCAR, I agree with Ron. I think Joey Logano, he's going his time. He's got everything going for him. He's one of the premium teams. You got to realize there's only like 12 drivers in NASCAR that ever have a chance to win a championship because of the great gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Sure.
Joey Logano, clearly one of the haves, always in the hunt, and a very aggressive driver. Maybe not the most popular on the racetrack, but he's got, again, a unique talent. Not quite the differentiation that Patrick Mahomes has in football, but Joey Logano is a heck of a driver, and if I'm going to put my money on him, Denny Hamlin might not be around for 4 years. I don't know. He's as old as me, I think. Joey Logano's not. He's a young guy. He's in his prime. He's got a number of years to go. We may be picking him 4 years from now as a guy to win the most in the next 4 years.
Maybe so. Did I miss that? Do you have a women's tennis pick? It's not mandatory.
No, I went with Ashley Barty because she's number 1.
Okay, gotcha. All right, there you go. The next one here, will there be the biggest gate for a U.S. show in UFC or boxing? Now, oddly enough, I had to split this on the scoring from the last 4 years because the biggest gate was actually Mayweather-McGregor. So I gave a half point to everybody that picked UFC. Every one of us here has picked UFC to be the biggest gate for the next 4 years, even notwithstanding the fact that we may have a heavyweight boxing unification match coming up, and we'll have to see what that still means in the 2020s. But, Chris, I'm guessing you're probably not going to go against the consensus here and say boxing.
Wrong again, my friend. I went with boxing.
Really? Okay.
Yep. I like the unification possibility. I like Tyson Fury 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's another possibility.
Okay.
I think that there is a chance for the heavyweight division to rebound in boxing, and boxing goes the way the heavyweight division goes.
Very interesting. Okay. All right. One vote against the consensus here. Nate, you going to make it 2?
Nah, I'm with the consensus. I just see there's too many big ticket names out there in boxing, such a dying sport at this point. I don't know how it's going to ever rebound. So.
It's definitely seen better days, no question about it. The next 2 categories, we'll take them separately, but they have a lot in common. Highest grossing movie star and highest selling musical act. These are ones where it may or may not be possible to really forecast on this. For highest grossing movie star in the next 4 years, Tim Trammell says Bradley Cooper. Dave Adams says Emma Watson. Ron Glasnap says Samuel L. Jackson. Steve Servillo says Michael B. Jordan. John Adams says somebody not yet on the radar. And I said The Rock. So, Chris, who do you have for this category?
I'm saying this is one of those topics that is so difficult to predict, what the big movie is going to be in the next 4 years. But I'm going to go with, Sam Worthington.
Okay.
Because he's going to be starring in Avatar 2.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go ahead and say Avatar 2 is going to be, along with, Kate Winslet, if you want to give the opposite, because she's going to be in Avatar 2. It's going to be probably the biggest movie in the next 4 years, if you might guess.
Chris, you're not going to believe this. I'm looking back here at 4 years ago, and Tom Denk made the pick 4 years ago. Sam Worthington in the Avatar sequel. You were the second consecutive person to make that pick. Maybe they'll make it in the next 4 years.
Hey, you never know. If they go ahead and finally get that movie out in the next 4 years.
That's hilarious to me.
Then I will finally do a right?
I think we can all count on the fact that in 2024, if they haven't made it yet, someone will pick Sam Worthington again. I look forward to seeing that happen. Nate, who are you going to go with for this one?
Well, that one's not on the radar. Now, 4 years ago, I think I went with the Star Wars actors. Who won the 4 years ago? Did you
Well, yeah. So Daisy Ridley was your pick from 4 years ago, and ultimately, this I would have had to have given partial credit to anyone from the leads from Avengers: Infinity War and Avengers: Endgame. Basically, that's what it came down to for any of them. And yeah, didn't see that coming. So
I'd be interested to hear who Ron thinks what movie Samuel L. Jackson is going to be in the next 4 years, because that'd be cool. I'd watch that movie. But what is it, Ron? What do you got in mind with Samuel L. for the next 4 years? That's pretty cool.
I'll have to put that to him off air, no question about it. So you said someone not yet on the radar?
Yeah, not on the radar.
Okay.
I like Chris's answer, though. I think that's solid. Obviously, Avatar 2 is going to rake in tons of cash. But who knows? 3 years from now, there might be a movie pop that we can't even fathom right now. So I'll go with that safer pick in my mind. Not on the radar.
Could be, and we're getting a lot more of that option in the next category. Highest selling musical act in the next 4 years. Tim Trammell says Lady Gaga. Dave Adams says Shakira. Ron Glasnap says Taylor Swift. Steve Servillo, John Adams, and Rick Morris all saying someone not yet on the radar. So how do you see it shaking out, Chris?
I'm going to go with this kid there, that Billie Eilish.
Okay.
Yeah, that young girl.
Okay.
Her debut album. She's a big deal with kids my daughter's age, man. She's a lot of talent, and she obviously just won a lot of Grammys. She just won some. God, I think she didn't win some other things out of it too? Did she get an Oscar out of something? I don't even know.
She performed at the Oscars, yeah, and so evidently it's possible to be a big selling musical act these days without even knowing who Van Halen is, which kind of blew my mind. But
Well, when you're 18 years old, don't forget 18 years old. That means you should have born in 2002.
Yeah, well, true, but when we were doing our Oscars recap, I asked my co-host on that one, John Bastow, as far as, because I think she was performing yesterday for a montage that they were doing, and I was like, is that stunt casting? Because she probably doesn't know who the Beatles are, right? I mean, that's why they got her to do that.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a pretty safe pick right there, no question about it. Nate, which direction you looking in here?
Well, I was wondering if Chuck D and Flavor Flav are going to make a comeback and maybe really rock the house here in the next 4 years. But I think Flavor Flav's like 60, so I'm going to go with not on the radar.
Okay. Well,
and if he's only not on the radar, I want you to know that I gave a lot of consideration to Guns N' Roses.
okay.
Oh yeah. The word on the street is they're gonna try to go into the studio and put an album together. And if they do that, that album may end up being the one.
Well,
He'll get my money. I promise you that. He'll get my money, and I'm not the only one like me. So yeah, sign us up.
maybe they'll finally get around to releasing Chinese Democracy one of these days. Wait, what? So, we'll see.
No, they already did. Man.
I know. Yeah. Exactly. So, the next one here, I'm going to take these two together. Who will be president and vice president on that date? Let's look at what the tickets are in everyone's estimation. Tim Trammell, I don't know if he intended to make this pick, but this is the most entertaining pick, because obviously you'd have to be elected this year for this pick to take effect for next time, unless we're seeing a lot of people get impeached and removed from office and you get bumped up one way or another over the next 4 years. His ticket, who will be in the office in 2024, Donald Trump Jr. and Jim Jordan. So it would take a lot of gymnastics for that to happen by February 29th, 2024, but that was his pick. Dave Adams with the more conventional route of Donald Trump Sr. and Mike Pence. Those were also the picks for John Adams and myself. Ron Glasnap, interestingly, says for president, someone not presently on the radar, and for vice president, he poses the question, does it matter? And then Steve Cervello just put down question marks for both, so evidently that's not a pick. So Trump-Pence has been kind of the consensus pick here thus far, kind of like how it was 8 years ago when the vast majority of it at this time were saying Obama and Biden. Now 2012 played out pretty much chalk from that point on. 2020, there's so much crazy crap that could still happen between now and then, including, of course, the aforementioned coronavirus. But, Chris, whether it's all things being equal or not, how do you see it shaking out in 4 years?
I'm going to throw the curveball.
Okay.
Because there's no reason to play this game if we're always going to go chalk.
Okay.
In fact, I think that should be a rule in this entire thing. Throw chalk out the window. You're not allowed to do it.
Okay.
If you want to do chalk, just go ahead and keep your ballot.
Okay.
I am going to go with Pence, Haley.
Pence, Haley. Okay. All right.
And that happens because Trump is reelected in 2020, along with Mike Pence. The Democrats take Senate 22.
Okay.
They finally get their impeachment and conviction of Trump in 23. And they remove him. Pence moves up, and he picks Nikki Haley as his vice president.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that. I'll give you credit. That's a coherent scenario. I mean, that's you went outside the box, but you still have a coherent scenario. So, much respect. Nate, what's your thoughts on this?
I had a couple of thoughts. First of all, the thought that the vice president doesn't matter. Let's find out what happens if we got a 78-year-old with a history of heart attacks.
Right.
If the vice president matters or
That's
not.
right.
The vice president absolutely matters. And I'm going to go with Trump still being president, but I think the more likely scenario is he tweets himself a freaking heart attack between now and then Pence gets to become president.
Okay.
I mean, he's 73 years old, and he's in a very high-stress job. I think it's more likely he just bites the bullet than he just gets impeached again. But I'm going to stick with he still being president 4 years from now. Obviously, conventional route. I'm with you. I couldn't envision Hillary being our president 4 years ago, Rick. I had Dick Trump could either. But man, Hillary being president just couldn't get my head around it. Didn't happen, thank God. 4 years from now, there'll be somebody with an R beside their name as president. I promise you that.
That does seem likely at this point. So you're saying Pence still is vice president?
Yeah, he'll still be vice president.
Okay. The next category is one where I don't expect that this is probably one that you guys care about as much, but for the rest of us who do, we all had different picks that we made here. Pro wrestler with the most days as world champion. That counts the Universal title and the WWE title for WWE, plus the newly formed AEW, which of course did not exist 4 years ago. So whoever in either company has the belt, the big belt, most days. And you know what? And we'll even throw in the NXT title in WWE, since they're considering that to be the third brand as well. And that's where my pick kind of comes in. Tim Trammell says that the quasi-retired John Cena will have most days as champion, which he admits he doesn't follow the product very much. That might have something to do with his pick. Dave Adams says Adam Cole, the present NXT champion. Ron Glasnap says Seth Rollins. Steve Cervillo says Roman Reigns. John Adams makes it a clean sweep for former members of The Shield. He doesn't go by Dean Ambrose anymore. Now he goes by Jon Moxley in AEW. And ironically, on February 29th, 2020, he fights for the AEW World Championship on pay-per-view. Revolution, of course, Saturday night. So we'll see how that plays out. If he starts his reign, as Johnny forecasts, I'm predicting the Velveteen Dream. So I suppose he will start in NXT as champion and move on from there. That guy looks like a main roster star to me. So, Chris, I'm sure this is one that you don't care about as much. You willing to throw anything at the wall on this one?
I'm not even going to attempt to throw.
Okay.
I don't know, and I wouldn't even attempt to, because it would be terrible.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I respect that.
Is the rock still an option?
Well, The Rock is about as plausible these days as John Cena, who Tim Trammell predicted. So I will respect your recusal on this one here if you don't have a pick that you feel has any kind of merit to it whatsoever. How about you, Nate?
I think that Philip Jack Brooks will renounce his fighting career and go back into wrestling. Billed as the top wrestler in all of wrestling. CM Punk. This is my pick.
CM Punk. Well, again, off the radar, so to speak. I mean, he's back with a broadcast job, at least roughly connected to WWE anyway, so we shall see.
41, why not?
Yeah. No, listen, I respect that. We go towards some of the more technology-oriented areas right now. Major technological advances. So these are just kind of opinions here on this one. Tim Trammell, making an inside joke about our bowling league, says, Doug will be nice. And when he gave me his ballot, I said, so you're predicting major advances in electroshock therapy in the next 4 years, if that guy is going to be nice. So that's what that must be, clearly. But Dave Adams says, microchip implants in humans. Ron Glasnap says, 1 GB wireless service everywhere. The pick for Steve Cervello, advancements in face and voice recognition for payment transactions. John Adams says package tracking, maybe a chip in each package, and personal helicopters to some degree. And that one there sort of goes to my thing. I am stubborn. I am not going to quit letting go of this until science finally gets off its ass and delivers it to me. My pick is jetpacks. I want my damn jetpacks. Science, you owe it to me. You're overdue. I'd like to see them in the next 4 years, so I'm going to homer for that one. Chris, I'm sure you're probably going to go much more practical than I just did.
Well, I want you to know that I do appreciate your hard grip on jetpacks. But I want you to know that from a technology standpoint and where we are in the world in terms of snowflakedom and everybody's concerns about livelihood and safety, they're just not going to be practical and they're not going to happen. So I appreciate the fact that you want your personal jetpack, but it isn't going to happen.
Okay.
So I went a little different direction, and my answer is going to correlate again to the last item that was on your list as it relates to jobs emanating from artificial intelligence. So my answers are going to be intertwined,
Okay.
if you will. The biggest major technological advance that I see, and I may slightly ahead of the curve on this, but is going to be the development of the mirror world. And what the mirror world is a representation of the real world in digital form. And think of it like a utilitarian software model for real human environments and their workings. So it is connected to real models, so it's not a matter of augmented reality, or rather a virtual world. It's very closely related to augmented reality. As he was like, the kids wear those headsets now and they play video games and whatnot. So in the mirror world, and why this is important, and I guess right now the closest thing that you could kind of give an example of is like think of Google Earth. It is a technology that, when combined with AI and virtual reality technologies, will allow people to start working within it as if it is in real form. And so that's going to allow people from a work standpoint to work on development of projects in essence a virtual manner. From a recreational standpoint, it's going to allow an entire opening up of things beyond computer games. People living almost like a second life in this mirror world. And then lastly, what will emanate from that, and I'll get into this at the end when we get into the jobs component, it's going to create an entire secondary economy.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is something where I remember you talking about this, and you had an article about it on Facebook some time ago. So I'm somewhat familiar with this concept from seeing this, and you had a little thread about it and whatever. I will say, though, aside from that, I mean, if I was just hearing this for the first time, I think it would probably hit me the same way the 3D printing thing did 8 years ago on this day when I learned of it, because that is a pretty far-out concept. Nate, as the person who was on the phone with me going over it with learning about 3D printing 8 years ago, do you concur that that is as mind-blowing a field as 3D printing seemed 8 years ago?
Absolutely, but I could absolutely see where Chris is coming from, and this could happen. Hadn't thought about it. It absolutely could happen.
Yeah, and it's already making its way through there. So it's on any of these ones here, Nate. Maybe I should go to you first, because Chris is always a tough act to follow on the futuristic things. I must have.
I got a deferral on this one. I'm like Chris. Mine's kind of combined with your very last question, so I'm just going to save it for the end.
Okay, all right. We'll save it for the end then. I'm going to skip ahead then to the category that Chris referenced. We'll take these ones together. And this is a thing of what jobs, if any, will be created out of artificial intelligence. We keep hearing about jobs being lost, and it's happening already in a lot of ways in terms of things that can be done basically by computers. But what jobs, if any, will be created on the other end? And this really led to a nice kind of variety of answers that we got from people. Dave Adams says a robot mechanic, robot pets, and house servant rental, and in parentheses he says see iRobot movie. Ron Glasnap says train and subway drivers, so he must apparently feel that there will be some kind of thing there where even if there is automation, that there will be people needed to help service that automation there. Steve Cervillo says no specific titles, but they will be in areas of cybersecurity, data collection, customer service, health and wellness, and healthcare. John Adams says bionic technician, and basically for upgrades for bionic technicians, that will be a crucial thing there. And me, again, I don't really have a lot of imagination in this area. I'm the first to admit it. So I'm going to say maintenance in the short term. These robots that are coming, they're going to need to be serviced until such time as we have other robots that can service them. So I'll say that, and I'm sort of more of a dystopian about the future anyways, so I'm not necessarily somebody that you would expect to think of in terms of these type of jobs. But Chris, you're basically saying then that to tie it to the previous thing here, that the mirror world, again, when you're talking about an additional economy, that's a thing where obviously you're figuring that AI is going to be a part of this thing with it, and it'll kind of tie in that way?
That's correct, and I would just really quick comment on the sort of the robot maintenance and all the rest of that. I do think there will be a lot of jobs in those types of maintaining AI and robotics, but I don't think you're going to see that in the next 4 years. And I would say also that what I'm about to when I talk about the mirror world and the jobs that derive from that, I would also say that I don't think in the next 4 years we will see a large volume of jobs emanating from that. But what we will see is the development of the mirror world, that economy that grows out of it eventually, and the jobs that it develops. We'll see those seeds having been planted in the next 4 years. But in terms of like volume of jobs, that kind of thing, I mean, I would suggest that would be a thing that would be overwhelming in the next 4 years. So what does that mean? Well, as you develop the mirror world, there's going to be a lot of different aspects where there will be jobs developing technology, applications, testing real, testing scientific theories using AI. On the recreational end, think of it like, now you have like, it's like Sims, okay, where people, what are some of these other video games that the kids play that have long, lengthy worlds that they run around like nights and collect things and play each other on many levels? I can't really tell what they are. A World of Warcraft type of things, right?
Right.
Well, imagine that on a larger and grander scale. So you are, from a recreational standpoint, you are existing mirror world. So imagine if Google mapped every square inch of planet Earth. And now you, Rick Morris, put on your headset, and everything looks like, looking around your house right now, looks like your house, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But now you're Rick Morris, secret agent, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Bump, bump, bump. And you get in your car, in your headset, drive down to the bottom and shoot the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the mirror world, okay? You'll be able to conduct commerce within the mirror world. As people get more and more involved in the mirror world, from a recreational standpoint, a fantasy standpoint, there'll be an entire mirror economy grow out of that in terms of what they spend their money on within that realm. So it's going to allow for work within it, recreation within it, scientific exploration, scientific theories to be explored, apps to be developed, people to use it for recreation and escape. All these things will come back and create elements of commerce, and there will be people that will put on their headsets and they will go into the mirror world to work within it, and even within, say, you're playing it, you're using it as a recreational out, you'll encounter people within it who are there to make money. So while you're going through it as a recreational exercise, they're there to sell you, the virtual mirror, things that you're doing in that. So it's going to create a whole separate economy, digital economy.
The one thing is, I think I saw this before, because I watched Ready Player One also, so I think I'm basically somewhat familiar with this.
Okay, well, I never saw that. But
Okay. Well, I'm making light of it, obviously, but yeah, this is a hell of a prediction, and I respect this. This is
Now,
way
I'm
out
not
there.
saying that we'll see all of that in the next 4 years.
But the start of it.
Simply saying
The
that
start of
that
it.
is going to start of that, the beginning versions of that will occur, sprouting in the next 4 years.
Well, yeah, that's...
Unless coronavirus kills us all.
Yes. Chris, that's the proviso on everything. And listen, there won't be anybody left to listen to this thing in 4 years to know that we were wrong if that was the case. So we can say this with some degree of safety on this either way. So Nate, on this one of AI created jobs, the start of any of that in the next 4 years, have you got any ideas? I admit to having kind of struggled on this myself.
Well, Rick, first of all, I'll jump to that in a second, but 4 years ago when we did this show, Bitcoin wasn't something that really existed. It was trading for what, like $400, $300?
Something like
Think
that.
about that. Bitcoin in 4 years went from didn't exist to, as you know what they do in Washington State in the Columbia River Basin, there's literally like thousands and thousands of people that just, all they run are Bitcoin operations. They just run empty server rooms and stuff like that. Crazy. So what Chris is saying about the real world, man, that could all come to play. Who knows? What I think, though, Rick, if you look at what McDonald's has done in the last 2 years, they basically have put 3 to 5 automated ordering systems in every single McDonald's in the United States. They've got a goal to rebuild every McDonald's and automate the ordering. So what they're doing is they're wiping out about a third of their labor force, if not half, because you can still got to make the food, but now you don't have to order it. So clearly one job, and I'll tell you this, when I went into a McDonald's lately, the ordering system was down. So there's people have touched on that a number of times in the discussion already here. The people that have to service things like the automated ordering system for McDonald's, that's definitely a huge growth potential here in the next 4 years because of the way, we talk about efficiencies, you're talking about eliminating skillless job sets. Well, somebody with skill has to come in and be able to fix the things that replace the skillless workers, and that's the job, the growth job, in my opinion. Even McDonald's itself, think about how many McDonald's locations are across this country. There's job opportunity right there because you're replacing the workforce with computers. You walk into McDonald's, you order it off a screen now, you don't talk to somebody.
That's right.
That's what they're trying to do. So.
And there's another chain, I think it might be Olive Garden. I think I had a friend of mine tell me that it's moving to there, and other restaurants are going to be doing this as well. So yeah, it's already moving towards that. Let's keep this somewhat connected here as far as the categories go. I'm going to try and make a logical segue. I'm going to go next to whether or not there will be widespread driverless cars in the next 4 years. One of the interesting things about doing this, by the way, is that, and you would expect this, we started doing this in 2012, and living in the day and age that we're living in, we have new categories every time in. As technology continues to evolve, there are new things to continue to predict that we wouldn't even be predicting. Like 4 years ago, I don't think anybody thought driverless cars were imminent. Today, there's a lot of hype about it. So Will driverless cars be relatively widespread in the next 4 years? Dave Adams says yes. John Adams says yes, but they will be working out flaws. Steve Cervillo says yes. I say yes. Ron Glasnap says no. It will not be that widespread. Chris, which way are you going on this? I could see you kind of going either way on this one.
When you talk about, when you use the word widespread,
Relatively.
we're of course not talking about Senator Larry Craig.
Yes. Yes.
We're talking about commonly seen, owned, and used. I'm going to go no. I think in the next 4 years, that's too tight a window to expect widespread. So I believe you will continue to see growth in it. I believe you will start to see more of it in terms of delivery options, bringing in your food, and I mean that more towards the tail end of this 4 years. You may see some more of that in very dense, slow-moving traffic areas for things like Uber and Lyft, for sure. I think a lot of Americans are slow to give up their self-driving privileges. I don't think the grid that would be, the technology grid that would be required to seamlessly run a large volume of autonomous vehicles together is yet in place or will be in place. So I still think it's going to be more of a 10% novelty versus, prevalent or widespread. Now, going beyond 4 years, that's going to be a different story. But in the next 4 years, I think it was no.
Well, I'll tell you what, as far as where you started on that, great minds think alike. Just last week, I was out doing a little bit of open bowling with fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Tom Denk. I hadn't bowled with him in a number of years, and I'd forgotten that he stands with his feet kind of apart, which is a weird kind of stance there. So I, too, made the Larry Craig wide stance joke at him when I noticed his style there. So great minds think alike when it regards to Larry Craig widespread, wide stance jokes. Nate?
All right, Rick, I got a question for you. If
Yes.
you won the lottery tomorrow,
Yeah.
and you offer to give your father a car with driverless car capabilities, would he take the car from you? Would he use the capabilities if he had it? Would your dad use
Well,
it if he had the capabilities?
special circumstances, because he would say yes, but that's just because he recently had cataract surgery. He may need more. He's worried about his eyes going downhill. So for him, that would be an insurance policy, Nate. But all things being equal, I don't think he would have said yes.
Right, and that's my thought. You surprised me on that answer, but I wouldn't think that people over the age of, say, X, 30 or whatever, are going to have any level of comfort with driverless cars in the next few years. It's way too new of a technology, and people that are over a certain age, they're not early adapters of technology like that. It scares them. So there's no way, shape, or form it's going to be that widespread in the next 4 years. Give it going a little bit. Let the millennials get into it. Whatever. Maybe eventually they penetrate the older generation. People 30 plus, they're not looking for driverless cars. Right?
Yeah.
I think that scares people. So
Well,
my answer is no.
okay. So in terms of adopting technology, this is one that we had on there 4 years ago. A percentage of internet-connected TVs in the U.S. up from 77% presently. So I asked everyone to make a judgment on what it was going to come to, because 4 years ago it was 56%. I ended up being pretty close to the mark. I said 84. The one who was closest to the mark was Ron Glasnap, who said 72, because it ended up being 77%. So it went from 56 to 77, and my guess is, me personally, that's the big jump that we're going to see, and it's going to get more incremental from here, just because you can't do the math. You can't keep making 21% jumps every 4 years from there. But nevertheless, Tim Trammell says 97%. Dave Adams says 92. Ron Glasnap, the winner on this one last time, he says 85. Steve Cervillo says 85. John Adams says 89. I say 86. So a lot of these ones here are in that sort of conservative middle ground. What's your best guess, Chris?
88.
88. Okay. All right. So another one that ends up being right about in there. Nate, do you continue to see it being kind of a leisurely jump up, or do you think it might go more or less?
Here's the problem with anybody that predicted into the 90s. You got to realize rural America simply does not have the ability right now. It's not the infrastructure. It's Ohio, you can't get a cell phone call at. Where I'm at, I live in a county that's 4,800 square miles, and about 2,400 of that square miles doesn't have cell service. So I get with 85. Ron and I had the same answer again. I think there's a certain point where you just can't get penetration because the infrastructure's not there, and it will never be there. Maybe not for another 20 years.
Totally agree. And one of these things here, one of the primary things that a lot of people are going to use a web-connected TV for is a streaming service. I knew this one was going to be splintered. This was maybe the one I was looking forward to the most in terms of answers. Streaming service with the most customers 4 years from now. Tim Trammell says Google. I'm going to put him down for YouTube Red because that's the streaming service that they have. Similarly, Ron Glasnap says Walmart. I'm going to put him down for Vudu because that's the one they have now. Now, Vudu is not one of the ones really on the radar as far as being one of the big boys, so we'll have to see how that pans out. Dave Adams says Disney Plus. That seems like a strong guess to me. I was surprised that the only one we got 2 votes for were Netflix, Steve Cervillo and John Adams, because to me they're already kind of circling downward a little bit as they're losing their library content to other places. I'm saying HBO Max, even though it hasn't even launched yet. I think that one is going to be a monster with all of the stuff that they are bringing to bear. They're even putting together a something of a Friends reunion on there to go along with having the Friends catalog. So I'm going with one of the new ones here, HBO Max. Chris, how do you see it shaking out?
I'm going with Disney Plus because of the kids.
Okay.
The reality is that the kids in the Star Wars franchise, that's where I think you're going to find, that's where you're going to find the most. And plus, Disney has a way when they start incorporating more and more with like ESPN and their other properties that they own and whatever else they acquire with their cash advantage. I think Disney Plus will grow to incorporate a lot of other things. It'll start to incorporate ESPN streamings and everything else along with their entire catalog. But man, it's like movies. If there's a Disney movie that's coming out, it's just as a kid, it's instant bang, right?
Right.
So I think that the streaming is going to be the same way. As they add to it and the number of title things that they've got, and having that advantage of kids, I think will be Disney Plus.
Well, and as you know, they're already doing something along the lines of what you're talking about in terms of the bundling with Hulu and ESPN Plus. So that is something, the power of those three together in a discount. Yes, Disney has the muscle that almost nobody else has as far as being able to promote their streaming service in that way. So that's a strong
don't
guess.
put it past them to buy somebody.
Yeah.
Don't put it past them to go and buy it.
Well, yeah.
Or to outright buy them.
Well, yeah.
Those are the type of things that I would also look for them to do, and that would certainly put them at number one pretty quick.
Well, Hulu at this point, of course, it started as one of these mishmashes, but I think with the whole buyout of the Fox Entertainment properties, I think they now own all the parts of Hulu. All the ownership shares, I think, are under their banner. So that's how they're able to do that. And yeah, listen, Hulu is one I'm surprised nobody's voted for yet, because I think they're going to be in a stronger position than, say, Netflix for 4 years from now, if for no other reason than having Disney behind them. I mean, Hulu might have been my second pick behind HBO Max. So, Nate, what's your thoughts on how this is going to shake out? I knew there was going to be opinions all over the place.
Yeah, I agree completely with Chris for a lot of the same reasons he said. It's Disney, man. It's ABC. It's Disney. It's John D. Rockefeller mentality, man. They're cutthroat, and they're big. They got all the power. They're going to squash all the little guys in the next 4 years. We'll see who's not surviving 4 years from now. But if Disney decides that they want to slide a few of their NFL games over to Disney Plus off of their ESPN, then they can do it. They've got all this power with their size and with all the things they control and all the contracts in place with all the major sports and college sports. They have all the power. I mean, they have the ability to just squash the competition at this point in time. And they're not. You ever go to Disney, Rick? You ever pay $14 for a Coke? They don't care about price gouging. They don't care about fair competition. They don't care about anything like that. They've got a mentality, like I said, they're going to be able to accomplish it. Watch out, Disney's coming. That's my take on it.
Well, yeah, I would agree with all of what you said there. Yeah, they're going to be very, very strong. in that arena. We're going to stay on streaming with our penultimate category here, major sports going to exclusively streaming in the next 4 years, yes or no. Dave Adams said no, there won't be any major sports properties that are just going to be on streaming. Again, major being the key word here. Steve Servillo says no, I say no. Ron Glasnap says yes, that he thinks MLS and NHL will both be exclusive to ESPN+. That would be pretty big if that happened, if there was any kind of dominoes whatsoever. John Adams makes a very interesting prediction that there will be NFL custom fantasy streaming, that the NFL will basically, at the very least, move all of their fantasy content to a new streaming service where you can customize it and watch all of your guys and be updated on them at any given point in time. So that's his prediction on that. What are your thoughts on this, Chris, on whether any major sports franchises are going to make the leap here? There had been a sense at some point, I think further back, that, by the 2020s, the NFL might just be on YouTube or this or that or whatever. Like, we were thinking this, a lot of people were 5 or 8 years ago, but now that these years are upon us, a lot of people like me are saying, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Well, I think like driverless cars, is there a point where it will happen? Yes, but right now the answer is no. There's no major sport that's going to make the exclusive jump to streaming.
Yeah.
In the next 4 years, it's just too big a leap. And actually, it would probably, at least initially, if it happened in the next 4 years, it would signify a real retreat for that league. So if I was going to pick one, in this country, the major, I'd probably go with hockey, but that's not going to happen.
I don't see it either.
They would be exclusively on stream. Then again, I think the word exclusively is the sort of the problem in that question. Now, if you had said predominantly, or worded it in a way to suggest that they would have a very robust, individually tailorable streaming packages, I might have been more inclined to look at that differently. And I think in the end, that's kind of the future of some of these streaming for major sports in the next phase, which is, hey, Rick, do you want to buy NFL streaming? We'll give you all your, give us your 3 teams you want to watch, and we'll stream you those. Like build a package. And you can stream and watch any game in any market, that wherever the Browns are, you can stream it and watch it wherever you are and whenever you want. And, the Dolphins, the Browns, okay, those are there you go. So you don't have to buy the full direct TV ticket. The problem with that stuff is, like, Sunday ticket and all that is still a cash out. So I'm not ready to pick up that yet to go to something individualized like that, so I'm going to say no.
Right, and that's where, and as you know, when we did our look back at the 2010s and look ahead to the 2020s earlier in the year, I mentioned this, that again, I am like a lot of people where the future hasn't moved as fast as I thought it would in this arena, because if you would have said to me 10 years ago, will we have by the 2020s, Netflix carrying the NFL, somebody else carrying this or that or whatever, I would have said yes. But I underestimated the power of local affiliates. Local affiliates across the country keep the networks propped up, and that's the infrastructure that I think I just wasn't taking into enough consideration. So the future has moved certainly slower than I thought it would in this arena, in that the networks are still a thing in the 2020s, and I didn't take that for granted 10 years ago. So in terms of the prism of looking at this, Nate, where do you come down on whether anybody's going to go to this exclusively or not?
Yeah, there's no way any major sports are going to go exclusively streaming. If they did, they wouldn't be a major sport anymore, in my opinion. I think the growth opportunity is where we've touched on a little bit. I think the DraftKings and the FanDuels and how much that market has grown, you tap into where maybe you get some customized training of individual athletes as they perform in their events. I think as they're starting to grow partnerships between major leagues and these sites like that they'll be able to develop that kind of custom content. But right now it's not there. It might be there in 4 years, but that's not exclusive, and it never will be. I can't imagine where the major media doesn't play a part in sports like football, the NBA, and baseball at any time in our near future. So
I would still say never, because you don't know what the shape of these things is going to be as technology evolves. But yeah, in the next 4 years, certainly, I agree with you. The last category that we have here is the question of, and again, this is a value judgment question. There's no definitive right or wrong, although I guess if the dollar value of the NFL plummets in the next 4 years or goes up, I guess there would be an answer either way. But generally speaking, will the NFL be in decline in the next 4 years with all of the challenges that it has? It is the colossus atop American sports. But from all of the challenges with the CTE thing, the helmet manufacturers, still having to deal with the ongoing threat of lawsuits, the fact that there is one insurer who is hanging by a thread right now as far as insuring the NFL for catastrophic issues with the lawsuits going forward. The NFL, there's a lot that's right below the surface that is really threatening them, even as they continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Will they be in decline in the next 4 years? By the end of the next 4 years, yes or no? Interestingly, the first 3 votes that came in, Dave Adams, Ron Glasnap, Steve Cervillo, both were no. All of those were no. The next ones that came in, John Adams and myself, we both said yes. So we'll have to see what shakes out as the majority vote here, Chris. You have the you can make it a majority no with your vote here, or you can make the deciding vote going to Nate.
The answer is going to be no.
Okay.
Again, I'm not looking at the CPE in that in the short term of 4 years. More about labor. Will they be on strike in 21? Is that possible if they don't sign the CBA? What's that do to the health of the game? That's to me the short term a bigger risk than the issues that you referenced. But I would go with no. I think the NFL will still be on the rise. I do agree with you. Long term, there are some issues for the NFL to have to deal with that jeopardize it. But right now, the human keeps rolling.
Well, and I think that I'll go, so you might not go as far as me on this, and that's frequently the case. When I say existential threats to the league in the long term, I don't think there's any existential threats in the next 4 years, but I think a lot of these things can be major, major, major guns to the head in the medium to long term for the league. But that's just how I see it. Nate, the next 4 years, what's the picture you see, up or down?
Well, I agree with you, Rick. The potential of your insurance carrier is absolutely catastrophic to the NFL, but this is the National Football League we're talking about. This is the biggest sports entity on the planet Earth. There's no chance it's going anywhere. It's just going to keep on going. I think once you get this big, there ain't no going down. They'll create their own insurance company if they have to. I don't know what the $1 billion number is beside their revenue at this point, but it's huge. Yeah, I agree with Chris. There's a potential for some work disruption in this CBA agreement, but the players aren't stupid. They're talking, to go from 45 to 48% revenue share, something like that. They're going to go for it. It's a lot more money. It's all about money, and everything's about money. We all know that, and there's no question the NFL is too big to fail. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to see decline in the next 4 years. Long term, it might, but not in the next 4 years. You got to say no.
Once you get this big, there's no going down. Sincerely, the dinosaurs. Sincerely, the horse and buggy. I mean, never say never, Nate.
Right. The steam engine says hi.
Yeah. Well, so we'll have to see how that plays out here. I hope you guys are right. I don't look forward to seeing football go down. A gun to my head, it would be the one sport that I would not want taken away from me, as much as I love all sports across the board here, or most of. I'm not a big soccer guy, but outside of soccer, but I don't.
Real quick, I got to interject. Whoever called MLS a major sport, I got to disagree with that. Come on now, MLS a major sport.
Well,
That's not Premier League.
Well, yes, exactly. Yeah, La Liga, English Premier League. If you're talking those ones, yeah, MLS is a feeder to it at best. That's American provincialism there, thinking it's major league because it's in our country. So before we wrap this thing up here, let's just see if there's any other additional notes. Chris, you've already had a couple of mind-blowing thoughts about the future. Anything else to add to the pile?
Nothing else to add at this time, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, everything thus far from you guys has been superlative here, and I greatly appreciate it. Nate, additional thoughts, predictions on the next 4 years?
We will not be a socialist nation 4 years from now, Rick. Put it down. We will not be a socialist nation.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, but it's a long ways till November, so we got to get through 2020 first before we start talking about 2024. And if you get a black swan event like the coronavirus, all bets are off potentially. So that was what we said at the beginning. This is the, again, all things are being equal edition of this thing. Hopefully 4 years from now we can look to the future with a little bit more certainty than we can this time. But as Chris said, that's basically half the fun of this anyways, is just making our predictions and seeing what comes true and what doesn't. I cannot thank both of you guys enough, Chris Galloway and Nate Noy, two of the originals, the guys who were here in the lounge on day one, January 14th, 2007, along with me, and then subsequently becoming, in the case of Chris Galloway, the chief futurist, Nate Noy, the director of research for the lounge. Thank you to both of you guys, and thank you everybody for tuning in to FDH Lounge mini episode 1200.